what this is forcing, Clay, is a recognition of there are downsides to illegal immigration. They hide them. The Democrat Party doesn't want to talk about them, but there are downsides. There are costs. There are trade-offs. And that's before you even get into the lack of sovereignty and lawlessness and all the rest of it. But clearly there's a resource drain that comes from this. It's going to be a resource drain on the local schools. It's going to be a resource drain on, and these are people who are not paying taxes, obviously. I mean, they're overwhelmingly likely to need substantial state and federal resources. And people say they don't get welfare. That's a lie. They do. Just a question of how and where. So, yeah, we're having a national conversation about illegal immigration, courtesy of some sanctuary cities in Martha's Vineyard. I think it's a good thing.
Buck, we have talked for a long time on this show. You and I started together in June of last year about the unmitigated disaster that was occurring at our southern border. You made the analogy back when Ukraine got invaded that Joe Biden and the Democrat Party cared way more about Ukraine's border sanctity than they did our own country's border sanctity.
A lot of folks borrowed that, which is cool. Happy to help. Happy to help.
And so what's happened since then is, I believe the first person to do this, we met him on Friday of last week down in Austin, Texas, Governor Greg Abbott. Got to tour the Texas governor's mansion. It was awesome. Fantastic time down there for the Alabama-Texas game. And Governor Greg Abbott decided, hey, I'm going to start busing migrants. I believe initially it was to New York City, Buck, and then he expanded it to Washington, D.C., and since it's gone to Chicago. And now other state governors, I believe Arizona is doing it, and now it appears Florida is doing it, are allowing people to decide to go to different parts of the country and either busing or flying them to that part of the country and releasing them there and saying Washington, D.C., New York City, Chicago, and now Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has upped the ante by shipping illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard. Martha's Vineyard, of course, one of the most elite of all communities in the United States, one of the wealthiest, obviously, on an island. So
median home price, $1.3 million, I believe.
Okay. So an expensive place to live and a place where it's worth noting on that median home price, most of these are second homes. These are not homes that people would even be using as their primary residence. They are summer homes for the extremely wealthy from Boston and New England areas who go in vacation on Martha's Vineyard. I believe Alan Dershowitz, who we had on the program, actually lives on Martha's Vineyard. It might be an interesting question to get him on because he's been talking about how everybody hates him on Martha's Vineyard because he's defended Trump's constitutional rights.
If you are a super rich, elitist lib in the entire northeastern corridor of the United States, really from D.C. all the way up to Maine and then all the way over probably till you get into the Ohio Valley area. If you are a super rich coastal elite, you go to the Hamptons, Martha's Vineyard, or Nantucket. Just for folks that are on the West Coast, whatever, if you're wondering, like, why are we talking?
Have you ever been to Martha's Vineyard?
I dated a Martha's Vineyard townie when I was in college. So she was a year-rounder, which was fascinating because...
Which is rare.
There's very few of them.
Yes.
I got she went to Smith, I went to Amherst, and I got kind of the view of what the year-rounders think of the summer people. And let me tell you, they tend to not think very highly of them.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
As
and the whole system lived in the Caribbean and got used to all the tourists coming in. Nobody who lives in a tourist destination likes the tourists.
Exact same mentality. But it's all meant to get as much money from the rich people as possible. This is funny because this situation today is amusing because you have maybe, I think it's 50 so far that have arrived in Martha's Vineyard, which is one of the most high-income enclaves.
This is where Obama had his 60th birthday party.
Yeah,
right?
Obama has
Vineyard?
He bought it for $15 million. I'm sure he could sell it for $20 or $25 million now. And it's so weird, Clay, because it's right on the water. And with climate change as our biggest
there's not even going to be any land
threat,
left.
I will buy that house from Obama for for $1 because I'm a good guy and I don't want anyone to be at risk of the rising seas that are coming. But so weird. People in Malibu, Martha's Vineyard, they don't sell their houses at a discount. You have 50 people, migrants, that have been dropped off. I believe this is a DeSantis initiative from Florida.
That's right.
Governor Ron getting in on the action. And there is a lib freakout over this. It's one thing I actually thought, and I will say I misjudged this a little bit. I figured there's no way the libs are so dumb that whether it's New York, Chicago, D.C., as you've pointed out, when these illegal migrants show up, they should be throwing parties in public. The libs, just for the optics of it. Oh, my gosh, because we're always told that illegal migrants are harder working, more law-abiding, better than Americans, period. They're going to start the next Google. We should be having a ticker tape parade. This should be amazing. Instead, they're freaking out about resource drain. We can't handle this. We can't deal with this. And in Martha's Vineyard, you know what it really is? They don't want to have to deal with poor people when they're going to their $10 million beach estate. They don't want to see them camped out on the streets. Bringing it to their backyard, Clay, all of a sudden, that's too much.
Well, and we got to give credit to Governor Abbott as well. They dropped off busloads of illegal immigrants at the vice president's residence this morning because she said the border is secure. And so Texas sent, I believe, 2 busloads of illegal immigrants and actually opened up the doors outside of the vice president's home to allow all of those illegal immigrants to be released in Washington, D.C. Brought them to her doorstep since she says it's not an issue. Now, this is the only time. This is why it works. Okay, this is the important part here. No one will talk in the Democrat Party. No one in the mainstream media will cover the border at all unless this occurs. You bring it to their doorstep, New York, D.C., Chicago, now Martha's Vineyard. Remember, Mayor Muriel Bowser in D.C., Buck, they were so overwhelmed by a couple of hundred illegal immigrants in terms of their being able to handle them that she requested that Joe Biden call out the National Guard to allow them to process and handle this influx of only a couple of hundred illegal immigrants. And we're talking about millions coming across the border, and Arizona and Texans having to deal with this all the time.
I just want to know, why is it that a predominantly working class community, city like El Paso, Texas, should have to handle the massive influx of illegals? Yes, many of them move on. Many of them stay in the area. There are photos, we just talked about this, of illegal immigrants camped out on the streets. Yes. El Paso should have to handle this. But the moment that they're in Martha's Vineyard, it's according to the Democrats, a national crisis, a disgrace that the Republicans. Well, why is it a disgrace? The people of Martha's Vineyard, which I would also note is 80, 90% Democrat as an enclave, just so you know. I mean, this is a blue island out in the sea off of Massachusetts. The people of Martha's Vineyard, many of them, and I give you credit for this on Twitter, Clay, they've got pool houses. They've got guest houses. I've seen these estates. Look at the Obama estate. They've got 8 bedrooms. The Obamas are there probably 2 weeks a year. Why not open them up and let these illegals, come on. It's the humane. Housing is a human right. It's the right thing to do. Los Angeles is making hotel operators, possibly, they're looking at this law, take in homeless people. Just they have to. No choice. If you have empty hotel rooms, got to take in homeless people. Why doesn't Martha's Vineyard set an example, Clay? Why don't all those libs who donate to Biden and Obama and Hillary, why not say, hey, you can take over my chalet for a few months? I don't even need it.
I think that Ron DeSantis should keep this up and send hundreds of migrants to Martha's Vineyard. I really do. And Elizabeth Warren tweeted, Buck, and we need to play the audio here of CNN, of course, had a couple of commentators who completely lost their minds. But if you look at what Elizabeth Warren tweeted, she seems to be, first of all, she's not smart, right, in terms of being able to think about how things are played out strategically. She is smart in the context of being a left-winger, She's a liar. She claimed to be Native American so she could get a job.
I don't think she's very smart, by the way. I think it's all smoking. I think it's all smoke and mirrors.
Maybe she isn't very smart, but this tweet is certainly not very smart. Exploiting vulnerable people for political stunts is repulsive and cruel. Massachusetts is fully capable of handling asylum seekers, and I'll keep working with local, state, and federal partners to ensure we have the necessary resources to care for people with dignity. Why not send every single illegal immigrant right now to Massachusetts so that Elizabeth Warren can make sure that this repulsive and cruel system is taken care of? I'm sure there's lots of people listening to us in Massachusetts right now. Yeah. It would be fascinating to see how quickly all of these liberal left-wing enclaves flipped on illegal immigration if they actually truly had to deal with what Texas and Arizona do for just a month or two.
And they're not asylum seekers. That's another part of this that's so annoying, is that they're not actually going to seek asylum as in go through the asylum process. If they did, they wouldn't get it. But that is the loophole. That is the point of abuse of the system that all these individuals have overwhelmingly used to get into the country illegally in the first place, which is also, I might note, getting ahead in the line for actual asylum seekers or refugees, right? It's asylum if you show up here on our soil. You're a refugee if you apply externally to come into the country. But there are people who are in actual duress for their politics, their religion, any number of things. They have to go through a process. But if you lie and say you're an asylum seeker when you show up at the U.S.-Mexico border and cross in illegally, then all of a sudden you're in a protected class. To your point, Clay, I mean, all these jurisdictions that say they're sanctuary cities, I mean, that which is what they are, Massachusetts, New York City, Boston, these are sanctuary city jurisdictions. They should welcome this. The more, the merrier. I mean,
that's what they're telling all of us in the red states that have to deal with illegal immigration on a regular basis. Oh, this is no big deal. You should deal with it. And it's going to be, again, they cannot handle a tiny percentage. And it's worth mentioning, this is important, all of these people are volunteering to get on buses and go to these places or airplanes. They are signing waivers. They are choosing to be sent to these locations.
No offense to McAllen, Texas, but if somebody said, I'll give you a free bus ticket or plane ride to Martha's Vineyard, especially in the summertime,
yeah,
you may say, I'll give that a shot. By Mayor Eric Adams, I just picked one random city along the border, but then there's a lot of cities people could be going to. Mayor Eric Adams has claimed that the Big Apple is, quote, near the breaking point after an estimated 11,000 migrants have been deposited in the sanctuary city. We got 8 million people, 8.5 million people in New York. 11,000 is making the city near the breaking point. Has he made his trip
down? Wasn't he going to go campaign for Beto in Texas? Has he ever made that trip yet?
I don't think he's done that yet. But I just want to ask Mayor Eric Adams. I mean, aren't they? I thought they're doing the jobs Americans won't do. I thought this only makes us all richer and better. And there's no. What this is forcing, Clay, is a recognition of there are downsides to illegal immigration. They hide them. The Democrat Party doesn't want to talk about them, but there are downsides. There are costs. There are trade-offs. And that's before you even get into the lack of sovereignty and lawlessness and all the rest of it. But clearly there's a resource drain that comes from this. It's going to be a resource drain on the local schools. It's going to be a resource drain on, and these are people who are not paying taxes, obviously. I mean, they're overwhelmingly likely to need substantial state and federal resources. And people say they don't get welfare. That's a lie. They do. Just a question of how and where. So, yeah, we're having a national conversation about illegal immigration, courtesy of some sanctuary cities in Martha's Vineyard. I think it's a good thing.
And we're not going to be like those municipalities and states where we fly people to Martha's Vineyard, where we put people on buses and have them fail to get the basic items they need. And anyone who states that this administration does not have a handle on this crisis, they must have been sleeping under a rock.
I don't know what the mayor of New York thinks he's saying there. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. The quote was, anybody who says the Biden administration does not have a handle on the border crisis, they must have been sleeping under a rock. He's saying, Clay, that New York is at the breaking point because of 11,000 migrants that have been moved to New York City. But he's also trying to tell us the Biden administration has a handle on the border crisis. But there are 8,000 right now people crossing in the United States illegally every single day. This is the highest the number has ever been, the fastest pace at which it has ever occurred. 5 million. I'm just wondering when they're going to, you know what they should do? We should have to see an updated number from the Census Bureau. That will take forever. But, just give us an official government estimate of how many illegals are in the country now. Because if that number's not 20 million, it's laughable.
I pitched replacing the COVID chart on Fox News with the illegal immigrant chart. Just every single day having an updated number of illegal immigrants in the bottom right corner of the screen that have entered the country. Now, the challenge is getting the data that's reliable enough to be able to put it in the bottom right corner of the screen. But you can basically do the averages, right? Per day, and assume that it's fairly consistent on a month-to-month basis, depending on the weather and the migratory patterns and whatnot. Obviously, some parts of the year, people cross the border at illegal rates higher than others. But I would love to hear the Biden White House having a debate right now about how to handle this for Joe Biden. Because if he comes out and condemns illegal immigrants being relocated from one part of the country to another, then he has to acknowledge that there is a major illegal immigration issue in the country in the first place, because all these illegal immigrants couldn't be shipped around the country unless they were entering illegally in the first place. So I don't know that he would get grilled about it. I think he probably would. So they have to figure out how he can make a statement and then get out of the way before he gets flattened over the fact that this is actually a root cause of his own administration.
I think they're just going to try to not talk about it. Their game plan is just
they're
run.
debating it right now.
Yeah.
What to do.
They're just going to try to avoid, but we won't let them.